grade 5s. Today we are going to be doing creative writing. So you are going to need your English book. We're going to be focusing on activity 5, pages 23 to 25. Poetry. Before writing, revise your knowledge about poetic language. In the table below, draw a line to match the meanings to their definitions. Metaphor. First word sounds. Simile. Words that are used to represent particular sounds. Alliteration. A two-line poem. The last word of each line rhymes. Onomatopoeia. A repetition of sounds. The repetition of consonant sounds in nearby words, especially at the ends of words. When one thing is another. One thing is like or as another. Repetition of vowel sounds. Okay, so I'm just going to go over a few with you. So a metaphor is when you compare two things by calling the one object another object. For example, you are a monster. You are comparing the person to a monster by calling them that. Then a simile, that is when you compare two things using like or as. Onomatopoeia, that is when sounds are produced with the words. For example, hiss or bang or cackle. Okay, and then a couplet, that's where some words rhyme at the end. So I haven't helped you guys with everything, but I hope that the few hints that I've given you help you a little bit later. Steps you can take while writing a poem. So firstly, you need to choose a topic for your poem. So that's going to be what this poem is about. Then 2, you need to choose a wild animal to write about. So choosing your wild animal to write about is going to be your topic. You need to choose an animal to write about, and it has to be wild. So it says this can be a lion, tiger, elephant, rhino, monkey, etc. Any wild animal you would like to write about. 3, choose a theme or topic that you would like to write about. Choose a central idea or theme for your poem. Okay, so with this over here, this is actually giving you certain themes that you could choose from. A, when I look into the eyes of a lion. B, riding on an elephant. C, when a tiger came to tea. D, the monkey took my hat. E, we should protect rhinos from poachers because. So with what you need to write about, it needs to portray a message. It can be funny, like when a tiger came to tea, or maybe that's very scary. It depends on your interpretation of the poem. So whatever you would like to write about, you need to make sure that it's got a message and something that the poem revolves around. 4, write what poetic language you plan to use. So write down the metaphors, rhyming words, onomatopoeia, assonance, alliteration, similes, and adjectives that you plan to use in your poem. You will get marks for each of these. So in many poems, figures of speech are used, and it makes things a lot more interesting. Okay, and it often gives the reader some imagery, which immediately makes the poem more exciting to read. So try to use as much poetic language as possible. 5, use descriptive language. Describe your feelings about the animal, something that happened to you and the animal, your feelings about protecting the animal from poachers, or what this animal can teach humans. Okay, so you can write about an animal that you're scared of. You can write about an animal that you love. Then you need to write your feelings about them. Or and then you can add on different themes. It depends on the theme that you've chosen. But if your poem is about being able to protect these animals from poachers, then you need to include that in your poem. Be descriptive. Tell us more about it. Describe the way that they look. Make your poem as interesting as possible. Okay, now you need to write your planning for your poem in the mind map below. Okay, so in this case, it's not below. In this case, I've done the mind map next to it. So with mind maps, it really helps with planning. And it also helps you to put things into paragraphs or stanzas or whatever the case might be. So in the center, we've got my poem about wild animals. So that is what your topic is about then. The wild animal that you have chosen. So I'm going to choose a tiger. So in that block, I would then write tiger. Then the poetic language used. Okay, so let's say I decide to talk about the terrible toothless tiger. I have now used alliteration, so I would then write alliteration down in this block. Will I use a rhyming scheme? So some poems have rhyming schemes. For example, I sat on my couch, and while I was doing so, I was about to slouch, or something like that. Horrible, horrible example. Please don't use it. But the point that I'm making is that rhyme scheme would then be AA. So I'm incorporating rhyming words. However, some poems can also be free verse, which means they don't need to rhyme. Okay. Then let's go to the block in the bottom left. What is the central idea or theme for my poem? So I told you I was going to write about the terrible toothless tiger. So my theme is going to be about how he lost his teeth. Okay, so that's just an example. And then the kind of poem I want to write, there are many different kinds of poems. It can be narrative, it can be lyrical, it can be descriptive. Okay, so narrative is if you're telling a story with your poem. Descriptive is if you're just busy describing a lot of things in your poem. Okay, so you guys are going to need to do a mind map like this, and you are going to need to write these points about your poem and the animal you have chosen to write your poem about. Okay, now you need to write your own poem. Make sure you use poetic language in your poem. Read the poem aloud to ensure that it has good rhythm. First, write a rough draft and check it with your educator. After checking your rough draft with your educator, make any changes necessary and then write a final copy of your poem in your workbook. And then you've got your first draft. Okay, so here's what we are going to do. You guys are going to do your planning and start with your first draft today. Then tomorrow on Friday, we are going to start with our final. The poem does not have to be very, very long, but it also cannot be too short. It cannot be 5 lines long. Okay, it needs to be a decent poem with everything mentioned, from the figures of speech to descriptive words, all of that, because you are getting marks for that. So anyway, so after your planning and your first draft, you are going to send it through to me, and then I am going to be adjusting it, and then I will send it back to you, and that's when you will write your final. So please do not write your final now. You just need to do your planning and your first draft. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed learning about poetry, and I'm super excited to read the poems that you guys have written about. I am so proud of you for getting through all of this the way that you have.